The sunrise over Arlington Heights has always awakened in me a strange mixture of pride and loneliness. 68 years of life have taught me to appreciate those mornings when the city is still asleep, and I'm standing at the panoramic window with a cup of black coffee. From here, from the top of the hill, I can see half of my construction projects. Templeton Construction is the brainchild of my life. Every building we've erected bears the imprint of my character. Strong, reliable, uncompromising. Cordelia used to say I get too attached to my buildings. Hugh, you build them like they should survive the apocalypse. She'd laugh when I'd come home after another battle with contractors who refused to follow my standards. Maybe she was right. Now that she's gone, I realize I was putting into concrete and the steel what I couldn't put into words. The desire to create something eternal in a world where everything is so fragile. 3 years without Cordelia. 3 years of waking up in the empty house I once designed just for us. Bronchopneumonia took her quickly, just 2 weeks from first cough to last breath. The doctors said something about a weakened immune system and a seasonal infection. But who cares now? The fact remains that I couldn't protect my own wife, despite all my money and connections. After her death, the 6-bedroom house became too spacious. The empty rooms filled with echoes. I could move out, but that would be a betrayal. Cordelia picked out every detail of the interior, from the marble countertops to the Victorian doorknobs. Leaving the house would mean leaving a part of her behind. The phone on the desk vibrated. Prescott Holleran, the private investigator I'd hired a month ago, rarely called without a good reason. Minus Mr. Templeton? I have something interesting about your sister-in-law. I grinned. Sister-in-law. Even that word sounded fake. Miranda Pembroke had entered our family like a cold wind into a warm room. I'm listening, Prescott. I'd prefer to see you in person. What time is convenient? In an hour, at the usual place. The conversation was short, but enough to lift my spirits. I put the coffee down and headed for the dressing room. I chose a dark blue suit. Cordelia always said it emphasized the seriousness of my intentions. Toby and I had been at odds long before Miranda showed up. My only son, my heir, decided that creating beautiful sketches was more important than actual construction, architecture instead of the construction business, dreams instead of reality. Dad, I want to create, not execute, he told me after graduating from college. I don't want to be a shadow of the great Hugh Templeton for the rest of my life. Those words hurt me deeper than I could admit. I was building an empire for him, and he chose a pencil over a backhoe. Cordelia tried to soften my reaction. Hugh, let him find himself. He's talented, just in a different way. Maybe if she were alive, we would have found a compromise. But without her gentleness, our relationship became a cold war. Formal birthday calls, occasional family dinners, with strained smiles. And then there was Miranda, a bright, ambitious realtor from a high-end real estate agency. Too flawless, too calculating. When Toby introduced her at Christmas dinner 2 years ago, I sensed a faux pas. She called me Papa Hugh from the first time I met her, as if she had a right to. Papa Hugh, Toby has told me so much about you. Your company is a legend in Arlington Heights. Her smile didn't affect her eyes' cold assessing. I could see her studying the furnishings of the house, mentally calculating the value of the antique furniture and paintings. I knew that look. That's not how one looks at family, but at assets. Toby was blinded. At 32, my son was still a naive boy when it came to human relationships. Miranda, then 28, seemed to him the epitome of success and independence. She had graduated from a prestigious university, spoke 3 languages, and knew how to charm the right people. The perfect wife for an ambitious architect. Their wedding took place 8 months after they met. Too quick, too elaborate. Cordelia would have rolled over in her grave if she'd seen that lavish show with 300 guests, of whom I knew barely a tenth. It's our business contact, Dad, Toby explained. Miranda says weddings are a great excuse for networking. Networking. Another word I hated. In my day, business connections were built on trust and reputation, not champagne parties. I gave the proper toast, smiled at the photographers, and even danced with the bride, feeling her fingernails dig into my palm. We are one family now, Papa Hugh, she whispered then. I hope you'll be a generous father to me too. After a honeymoon in the Maldives, which I'm sure Toby paid for out of his trust fund, The newlyweds returned and bought a house in the most upscale neighborhood of Arlington Heights, a six-bedroom Victorian mansion with a swimming pool and tennis court, too expensive even for a successful architect and realtor. It's an investment, Dad, Toby explained. Miranda knows the market. She says it'll double in value in 5 years. I just nodded. It was useless to argue. I could see my son growing more and more distant from me every day, falling under this woman's influence. Our Sunday lunches, a tradition we kept even during the worst times of our estrangement, became less frequent and then stopped altogether. Toby is very busy with a new project, Miranda apologized over the phone. Maybe next Sunday? But next Sunday never came. I could see the last bond with my son crumbling, and I couldn't let that happen. That's why I turned to Prescott Holleran, the best private investigator in the Tri-County area. If my intuition was right and Miranda wasn't who she said she was, I had to find proof. For Toby's sake. For our family. The Ordinary Place is an unassuming cafe in the old part of town. I'd deliberately chosen a place away from the posh neighborhoods where Miranda might have acquaintances. Prescott was already waiting for me at a corner table, a brown folder in front of him. "Minus Mr. Templeton," he stood up, shaking my hand. "Have a seat." Holleran was the opposite of the movie detectives, a neat, trim man in an expensive suit, more like an accountant than a detective. But his reputation spoke for itself. If anyone could unearth dirty secrets, it was him. "What do you got, Prescott?" I got right to the point, ignoring the menu the waitress offered. "Just coffee," I tossed to her without taking my eyes off the folder. "Miranda Pembroke, born Miranda Ellington," Holleran began, opening the folder. "Born in Bridgeport, not Boston like she tells everyone. Father was a truck driver, mother a supermarket accountant. No aristocratic roots." I nodded. Interesting already. Her prestigious education is 2 years at a community college and correspondence courses in marketing. The Cornell diploma she's so proud of is a fake. A good one, but still a fake. Go on. She had 3 affairs with wealthy men before moving to Arlington Heights. All of them ended abruptly. One of them, banker Griffin Welsh, sued her for jewelry theft, but then withdrew the suit. I guess she found a way to convince him. The waitress brought coffee. I took a sip, savoring the information more than the drink. "Anything about her current job?" "This is where it gets really interesting," Holleran turned the page. "At the Prestige Estate, she's really one of the top salespeople. But there's a suspicion that not all her deals are clean. 3 properties were sold at an undervalued price to companies that may be linked to money laundering. There's no proof yet, but I'm working on it." "What about her personal life?" That was the main question I was interested in. Holleran pulled some photos out of a folder. "Meet Boyd Callahan. He owns 3 nightclubs downtown. Twice a week, your sister-in-law meets him at the Lakeshore Hotel. Here are the pictures from last month." I scrutinized the photos. There was no doubt it was definitely Miranda entering the hotel room with a tall, dark-haired man. Other pictures showed them kissing in the car, holding hands in a restaurant. How long has this been going on? Apparently at least 4 months. I have their phone records. Pretty, explicit. I leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely satisfied. My intuition hadn't failed me. Miranda was exactly what I thought she was. A money hunter, a liar, a cheater. "There's something else," Holleran lowered his voice. "She's been going through your son's files on a regular basis. Bank statements, trust fund information. I installed a hidden camera in their home office like you asked. Here's the footage." He handed me a small tablet. The video showed Miranda sitting at Toby's computer going through financial documents. She was writing something down in a notepad, then calling someone. "Yeah, I recognize the numbers. The old man controls the bulk of it. Without his signature, Toby can't get more than 50,000. No, I'm working on it. Give me time." Anger and triumph mingled in my soul. I had found a weapon against this woman, but at the same time I realized how deeply she had sunk her claws into my son. "Keep watching, Prescott. I want to know her every move, every conversation, especially with this Callahan." "Of course, Mr. Templeton." Holleran put the files back in the folder and handed it to me. "What are you going to do with this information?" I took a long look at the picture of Miranda kissing her lover and thought of Toby, who at that moment was probably poring over the blueprints, believing he was building a future with a loving wife. "Nothing yet. I'll wait for the right time." "Every man has an Achilles heel, Prescott." Miranda's is self-confidence. She thinks I'm just a rich old man who no longer has influence over her son. She's going to make a mistake, and when she does, I'll be ready. I left a bill on the table, enough to pay for 10 cups of coffee, and walked out of the cafe. The air of Arlington Heights had never felt so sweet to me. There's nothing like the feeling of knowing something that others don't, especially when that something can shatter a carefully constructed facade. I got into my Bentley and called Toby. It was time to resume our Sunday lunches. Sunday lunch with Toby turned out to be more complicated than I had anticipated. My son had chosen a new restaurant downtown, a pretentious establishment with tiny portions and French names that even the waiter couldn't pronounce. Typical Miranda's choice, even though she wasn't with us. "She sends her apologies, Dad," Toby said as we sat down at the table. "An emergency showing of the house for important clients." I nodded, suppressing the urge to say I knew what her real plans were for the day. Holleran had sent me a text message that morning. "Subject is on his way to the Lakeshore Hotel. Callahan arrived 15 minutes early." "No big deal," I replied, studying the menu. "Even better." It had been a while since we'd had a conversation, just the two of us. Toby looked tense. I noticed the new wrinkles around his eyes, the gray on his temples. At 32, he seemed older than his years. Being an architect or living with Miranda was clearly not easy for him. "How's your project for the community center coming along?" I asked, choosing a neutral topic. His face perked up. "Surprisingly well. The mayor's office approved the final design. We start construction in 3 weeks." "That's good to hear. If you need any advice on construction issues." "Thanks, Dad, but we have a great team," he interrupted me quickly. "I know the situation. Any attempt by me to help was perceived as an intrusion." We ordered food and continued talking about the weather, politics, baseball season, safe topics that didn't require emotional involvement. I watched my son trying to see the old Toby in him, the boy who followed me around construction sites asking 1,000 questions, the one who looked at me with admiration instead of wariness. "Miranda and I are thinking about moving," he said suddenly when dessert arrived. "You just bought a house a year ago." I tried to keep my voice neutral, though the news alarmed me. That neighborhood had gotten too noisy. Miranda had found a terrific one in North Arlington. It's an old estate with history. The last owners, the Fulton family, had restored it with original details. Fulton Manor. I knew this house, a huge estate with 5 acres of land, a tennis court and stables. It's worth at least $6 million. "Impressive," I said, stirring my coffee. "And how do you plan to finance such an acquisition? Even for a successful architect, that's a lot of money." Toby lowered his eyes. "We were discussing early access to my trust fund. That's it. The real reason we met." "Toby, the terms of the trust are clear. You get full access at age 40 or sooner, only with my consent for certain purposes. Buying a luxury estate is not one of those purposes." "Dad, I'm 32. I'm not a child. This is my money left by my mother. Your mother has entrusted it to me to manage until you are ready. And from what I can see, you're still not ready." His face darkened with anger. "You always do this, controlling, deciding for me, treating me like I'm just an innocent boy." "Miranda's right. You'll never see me as an equal." "Miranda. Always Miranda." "Was she the one who suggested you move in?" I asked her directly. "What's the difference? It's a joint decision between us." "And she knows you'll need my approval to use the trust fund to do that?" Toby sighed. "Of course she knows. We've discussed it. She thought, we thought you'd be happy to help us." I set the napkin aside. The meeting hadn't gone as I'd planned. I needed time to think things through. "I'll consider your request, Toby, but I can't promise anything. Give Miranda my best wishes." We parted coldly. Toby didn't even suggest we meet the following week. Sitting in the car, I dialed Holleran's number. Find out all about the Fulton estate, who's selling, how much, who's handling the deal, and see if the house is connected to Boyd Callahan in any way. 2 days after our lunch with Toby, Holleran requested an emergency meeting. We met not in a coffee shop, but in my office, the top floor of the Templeton Tower building, overlooking the river and the downtown business district. "You were right about the Fulton house," the detective said, spreading out the papers on my desk. "It's not just a coincidence. Boyd Callahan is an investor in River Estate, which bought the property 6 months ago. They did minimal renovations, and now they're putting it on the market at a 30% markup. And Miranda's the listing agent? Not officially. The paperwork lists her colleague Lawrence Schiff. But I followed Miranda to 4 meetings with River Estate. I think they negotiated commissions that bypassed her agency. I strolled around the office, pondering the information. The pattern was becoming clear. Miranda and Callahan were planning to pull off a lucrative deal at the expense of my son and my money. Is there something else? Halloran paused. I think you should hear this. He pulled out a small tape recorder. A recording of the conversation between Miranda and Callahan yesterday in his car. He pressed the play button. Miranda's voice sounded excited. No, almost agreed. The old man is hesitant, but Toby will push him. I've already prepared the ground, constantly talking about control and distrust. Toby feels compelled to prove to me that he can make his own decisions. Callahan's voice was lower, husky. How much will you get? 6,100,000. 2 from the trust fund, the rest is a mortgage in Toby's name. You and I split 1,400,000 in commissions. Clean, no taxes. And if the old man doesn't sign? Miranda's laugh was cold. He will. I'll find a way to convince him. Or make him. Halloran turned off the tape. I sat motionless, feeling the anger rising in me like a tide. Keep watching, I said at last. I want to know every move they make. Over the next 2 weeks, the situation unfolded rapidly. Toby called me 3 times, each time increasing the pressure. This is the perfect house, Dad. A once-in-a-lifetime chance like this. The sellers are only giving us until the end of the month. Miranda got in on the game too. She sent me an email with pictures of the estate and a long, emotional text about how this house is perfect for the future grandchildren she and Toby are thinking about. Grandchildren. She knew my vulnerable spot. After Cordelia's death, the thought of continuing the Templeton family had become almost an obsession for me. I was getting older, and the prospect of leaving without seeing any heirs was agonizing. But thanks to Halloran, I knew the truth. Miranda was taking birth control regularly, carefully hiding it from Toby. She had no plans to burden herself with children, at least not until she had control of the money. I decided to play my own game. I invited Toby and Miranda to dinner at my house for the first time in a long time. To my surprise, they accepted without hesitation. I'll be happy to see you both on Friday, I told Toby over the phone. I might have a solution to your housing issue. On the day of the dinner, I woke up with a sense of an impending battle. That's what happened before important negotiations or the signing of big contracts. My sixth sense, developed over decades in business, rarely failed me. Halloran sent a morning message. The subject spent the night apart. She checked out of the Lakeshore Hotel at 6 in the morning. He stayed behind. Conversation in the parking lot. Discussed meeting in Miami next week. I smiled. Perfect timing for the offensive. They were getting careless, confident of success. In the evening, the house was filled with the aromas of gourmet meals. I'd hired the best chef in town and selected from the cellar the collectible wines Cordelia was so fond of. Everything had to be impeccable. Toby and Miranda arrived exactly at 7. My son looked tense, but Miranda was radiant. She was wearing an elegant black dress and a pearl necklace that I knew from Halloran's reports was a gift from Callahan. Papa Hugh! Shudder, she kissed me on the cheek. How long it is since we have been together. This house always gives me such admiration. Thank you, Miranda. Cordelia had put her heart into it. I noticed her wince slightly at the mention of my late wife. Miranda hated reminders of a woman whose place she could never take. Dinner began relatively quietly. We discussed the weather, the news of the city, the latest exhibitions. Toby was gradually relaxing, especially after the second glass of wine. Miranda, on the other hand, didn't drink much. She needed a clear head for the upcoming conversation about money. So, I said as dessert was served, I've been thinking about your request for the Fulton estate. Toby straightened, and Miranda set her fork aside, keeping her eyes on me. What have you decided, Dad? Toby's voice sounded strained. I looked at the deeds, checked the history of the house. The current owners. I paused, watching Miranda's reaction. Interesting company, River Estate. Founded only a year ago. Minimal capital. Opaque ownership structure. Miranda paled slightly but quickly pulled herself together. I checked them out personally, Papa Hugh. An absolutely reliable company with a good reputation. Absolutely, I nodded. Especially since one of the investors is one Boyd Callahan. Do you know him, Miranda? Silence. Toby stared at me and his wife in incomprehension. Miranda froze, her fingers clutching the napkin. Yeah, met him at a few real estate events. He's pretty well known in certain circles. Is that all? I kept pressing. No, any closer contacts? Business meetings at the Lakeshore Hotel, for example? Her eyes widened with fear, then narrowed with rage. She realized I knew. I don't know what you mean, Dad, Toby interjected. What business meeting? Miranda, have you talked to this man about our house? Toby, your father got it all wrong. Her voice trembled. Yes, I consulted with Mr. Callahan as a real estate expert, but solely for your benefit. I took an envelope out of my pocket and placed it on the table. Here are the photographs of those consultations. I think you'd be interested to know how your wife is protecting your interests, Toby. Miranda jumped up. Don't you dare! She lunged for the envelope, but I was faster. This is illegal. You've been following me. Sit down, my voice was quiet, but there was steel in it, forged by decades of running a tough business. Sit down or I'll show Toby not only the pictures, but also the tape of your conversation about how you plan to use him and his money. She slowly lowered herself into the chair. Toby looked at both of us with the confusion of a man who has suddenly found himself in someone else's play. What's going on? He demanded. Dad, what are those pictures? Miranda, what is he talking about? I looked at my sister-in-law. The decision was hers. It's okay, honey, she finally said, putting on a smile. Your father is just trying to break us up. He's always been against our marriage, you know that. Miranda's cheating on you, Toby, I said bluntly. For months now, with a man who's going to make millions off both of you by selling this house. That's a lie, she exclaimed, but her voice sounded fake even to me. Dad, that's a serious accusation. Toby looked shocked. Do you have proof? I hesitated. I wanted to crush this woman immediately, to show my son all the pictures, records, documents, but something held me back. Maybe it was the look in Toby's eyes, the confused, pleading look, like when he'd asked me not to punish him for breaking the window. I have all the evidence I need, I said calmly, but I'm not going to show it today. I want you both to think hard about the Fulton estate and whether you can afford this purchase without my help. Miranda was quick to capitalize on my retreat. Toby, let's go home. Your father is clearly not himself. These accusations, it's just insulting. Toby slowly stood up, still stunned. Dad, I don't know what's going on, but, this is over the top. Even for you, they left without saying goodbye. I was left alone in the huge dining room, amidst half-eaten delicacies and half-drunk wine. It began to rain outside the window, the drops drumming on the glass in time with my thoughts. I didn't show the pictures. I didn't destroy their marriage in one fell swoop, though I could have. Something held me back. Maybe a reluctance to see the pain in my son's eyes, or perhaps a more complex calculation. My phone vibrated, hollering. They just left your house. Serious argument in the car. He's driving. She's crying. Continue surveillance? Yes, I replied. Keep me posted. I walked over to the window, looking out at the rainy city. The first round was left to Miranda. She'd taken Toby away without giving me a chance to show all the evidence. But the war was just beginning. I'd planted the seeds of doubt in my son's soul. Now I had to wait for them to germinate. In the meantime, I had a new plan. If Toby and Miranda were having a family dinner next weekend, as they usually did on the last Saturday of the month, I'd pay them a surprise visit, uninvited. And this time I'll bring with me not only suspicion, but hard evidence. The following days passed in tense anticipation. Holleran sent regular reports. Toby and Miranda hardly spoke at home. He slept in the guest bedroom. She called Callahan a lot, but there were no meetings. Problems were brewing in my son's office, too. The mayor's office had unexpectedly requested additional review of the community center project, which threatened to delay it by at least a month. I had nothing to do with these difficulties, although I could have. My connections in the city administration would have been enough to stop any project, but I decided to let the situation unfold naturally. Sometimes the best strategy is to stay out of it and watch your opponent make mistakes on his own. On Thursday, Holleran broke the news. The subjects are planning a home-cooked dinner on Saturday. She has ordered food delivery from Lorraine Bistro for 8 p.m. No guests are expected. I smiled. It was as if fate was playing along with me. Lorraine Bistro was the restaurant Cordelia had once founded. After she died, I sold it, but kept the stake in my friendship with the chef. One call and I'd know their dinner menu down to the last detail. But that's not what I was interested in. Friday and Saturday were the days Holleran usually kept track of Miranda and Callahan's meetings. So there was no date planned for this weekend. Had Miranda decided to devote her time to saving her marriage? Or was she preparing for another round of trust fund battles? I spent Saturday morning in the office reviewing the trust documents. Technically, the money belonged to Toby, but I would retain control of it until his 40th birthday. The only exceptions were for education, medical treatment, or the purchase of a first home, an item they'd already taken advantage of a year ago. The Fultons' estate was in no way subject to the early payout clause. However, I could have changed the terms of the trust. I couldn't completely disinherit Toby. Cordelia had thoughtfully made that clause, knowing my difficult nature. But I could defer payments for another 10 years, or transfer the trust to a trustee. In the extreme case, to redistribute the funds in favor of future grandchildren, if they ever appear. Toward evening, I pulled out of the safe the folder Holleran had given me a week before. It contained everything: photographs, printouts of correspondence, financial documents proving Callahan's connection to the River estate, more than enough to open Toby's eyes. At 7:30, I got in my car and headed for my son's house. The Victorian mansion they'd bought a year ago was lit with a warm glow. Through the tall windows, I could see silhouettes moving through the rooms. I parked across the street and watched for a while. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, to avoid confrontation, to give them a chance to work things out on their own. But the other part, the part that had spent decades building the business and never backed down, demanded action. Cordelia had often said that my determination was both my greatest asset and my gravest flaw. You don't know half measures, Hugh. There is only victory or defeat for you. At that moment, the telephone rang. Holleran. Minus Mr. Templeton, there's new information. Yesterday, Mrs. Templeton withdrew $50,000 in cash from her personal account. Today, she booked 2 tickets to Miami for next week. One in her own name, one in Boyd Callahan's. That solved the case. I got out of the car and headed toward the house, clutching the evidence folder in my hand. The front door was unlocked. Typical Toby carelessness. The hallway smelled of fresh flowers and something baked. Muffled voices came from the dining room. I just don't understand why you believe him and not me. Miranda's voice sounded resentful. I didn't say anything about believing, Toby replied. I just want to know the truth. If my father made up this whole story, then... I came in without knocking. They were sitting at the dining room table, which was set with elegant dishes and candles. Toby, in a dark blue shirt, looked tired. Miranda was wearing an elegant red dress I hadn't seen before. Probably another gift from Callahan. Their faces expressed a look of surprise that would have made me laugh. Dad? Toby stood up. What are you doing here? I thought I'd join the family dinner. I walked to the table and placed the folder next to my son's plate. And I brought something interesting to read. Miranda turned pale but quickly pulled herself together. She stood up, squared her shoulders, and looked at me with undisguised hostility. Hugh, this is unacceptable. You can't barge into our house uninvited. Your home, I sneered. A house that was bought with my son's money earned from my company? Toby earned every cent of it through hard work, she countered. Wah, unlike some people, he doesn't use power and connections to manipulate me. Toby looked from me to his wife. Miranda, calm down. Dad, please explain what's going on. What's in that file? The truth about your wife. I sat down at the table uninvited. Her relationship with Boyd Callahan, her plans for the Fulton estate, her tickets to Miami next week. Miranda rushed to the folder, but Toby was quicker. He grabbed the documents and went to the window. Toby, don't look, she shouted. It's a fake. Your father is obsessed with controlling you. He's willing to tell any lie to destroy our marriage. My son opened the folder, and I saw his face change. Shock, disbelief, hurt, anger. All these emotions flashed in his eyes as he looked through the photos and documents. Is it true? His voice shook as he looked up at Miranda. She walked over to him, holding out her hands. Toby, let me explain. It's not what it seems. Boyd is just a business partner. Your father twisted it. Business partner, I couldn't help but chuckle. The one you call 10 times a day? The one you meet at the hotel? The one you booked a ticket to Miami for? What? Toby stared at his wife. What ticket to Miami? Miranda looked cornered. It's a work trip. I was going to tell you. Tonight? After you withdrew $50,000 in cash? I kept pushing. Sure, or after I'd accessed the trust fund through the Fulton estate? Toby thumbed through the documents, his hands shaking. These are phone records. You talked to him about how to manipulate me, how to use me for money. Toby, please! Her voice broke into a scream. Don't believe it. Your father has always hated me. He wants to control you like he's done your whole life. I remained silent, letting them figure it out. My part had been played. I had brought the truth. Now the choice was Toby's. For a few minutes, the room was silent, broken only by Miranda's heavy breathing and the rustling of papers my son was going through. Finally, he looked up. I want you both to leave. His voice sounded tired. I need to think. Alone. Miranda rushed toward him. Toby, no, don't push me away. I can explain everything. Yes, I've made mistakes, but I love you. Please, Miranda. He pulled away from her. Just go away. Just for a couple hours. Her face contorted with rage. She turned toward me, and in that moment, I saw the real her, not the glamorous realtor with the perfect smile, but the cornered predator. You, she hissed. You ruined everything. Happy? I stood up, ready to leave. My goal had been accomplished. Toby deserves to know the truth, and you deserve what you got. Miranda grabbed the wine glass and threw it in my direction. I ducked and the glass shattered against the wall, leaving a red stain that looked like blood. Get out of my house, she shouted. No, you're not invited. Get out. Toby tried to intervene. Miranda, calm down. Daddy was just leaving. But she wouldn't listen. She came right up to me and jabbed her finger into my chest. You think you won? You think he's going to come back to you like a good son? You're wrong. He hates you as much as I do. I looked into her angry face and felt strangely calm. All those months of watching, doubting, planning, and now she'd revealed her true nature to Toby. My job was done. You shouldn't have done that, I said quietly but clearly. Ha! Consider this the moment you buried your married life with my son. Her hand flew up for a slap, but Toby intercepted her wrist. Stop it! His voice had an authority I'd never heard before. In that moment, he reminded me of myself as a young man. Daddy, please leave. Miranda, either calm down or leave too. I nodded and headed for the exit. At the door, I turned around. Toby was standing in the middle of the dining room, tall, straight, with a frozen face. Miranda sat at the table, covering her face with her hands. Red wine dripped down the wall as a symbol of their broken marriage. Call me when you're ready to talk, I told my son and walked out. The night air was cool and fresh after the stuffy atmosphere of the house. I inhaled deeply, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. The deed was done, but the victory had a bitter taste. Sitting in the car, I dialed Holleran's number. Everything went according to plan, I said briefly. But I need you to keep the surveillance going, especially Miranda. I want to know her every move in the next few days. Understood, Mr. Templeton. I have men in position. Anything specific? I've been thinking. Miranda was cornered, but that made her dangerous. The kind of person who, when she loses everything, can do desperate things. Check her financials, every account, transaction, debt, and see if she's tried to contact any of my competitors or enemies. She must have a backup plan. Will do, the detective replied. What about your son? Toby, I sighed. I think he needs time, but keep an eye on him too, just in case. I started the engine and drove out onto the deserted street. Toby and Miranda's house was quickly out of sight, but I knew this was just the beginning. The situation would develop, and I needed to be ready for the next move. My revenge plan was just beginning to unfold. Revealing the affair was only the first act. Now it was time to truly punish Miranda, to take away not only her husband, but her reputation, her career, her future. I wanted her to lose everything she'd bargained for when she decided to use my son. As I drove up to my house, I remembered Cordelia's words from years ago. Hugh, your problem is that you never stop in time. Even when you've already won, you keep destroying. Maybe she was right. But now when the battle was just beginning, it was too soon to stop. Too soon. In my office, I opened my laptop and started making a list. I had several important calls to make. My lawyer, an old friend at the IRS, the head of the real estate agency where Miranda worked, and of course, the society editor at the city paper. By morning, they should all have some information about Miranda Pembroke Templeton. In the meantime, I poured myself a whiskey and raised my glass in a silent toast to the beginning of Miranda's end. The morning after the confrontation began with a phone call. I had just gotten out of the shower when I saw Toby's name on the screen. I'll admit I was surprised by this promptness. I'd expected my son to avoid communication for at least a few days. Toby, I tried to keep my voice neutral. We need to talk. His tone was dry, businesslike. Not over the phone? Sure. Where and when? In an hour at Highland Park, at the east entrance. He hung up without waiting for an answer. The choice of venue puzzled me. Highland Park is a huge green space on the outskirts of Arlington Heights, popular with runners and families with children. Not the most obvious place for a serious conversation, especially on a Sunday morning. I understood Toby's logic, though. A public place made emotional scenes less likely, and a morning jog always helped him think. 45 minutes later, I parked at the east entrance to the park. A light rain was falling, turning the gravel paths into a muddy mess. The few visitors were hiding under umbrellas or scurrying for shelter in the cafes. Toby was already waiting for me, sitting on a bench under an old oak tree. In sports clothes, with his hood pulled over his head, he seemed younger than his years, a boy who'd been suddenly kicked in the butt by life. Thanks for coming, I said, taking a seat next to him. He nodded without looking at me. I stayed up all night going over the stuff in your folder, checking dates, places, conversations, comparing it to what I remember. Minus I? And it all fits. His voice was colorless. Miranda's been lying to me this whole time. About her past, about her education, about Callahan, everything. I remained silent, giving him a chance to speak. I talked to her after you left. At first she denied it. Then she tried to explain that her relationship with Callahan was purely business. But when I showed her the phone records, he chuckled bitterly. You know what she said? That I couldn't judge her because I never understood what it was like to be a woman in the male-dominated business world. Classic manipulation, I observed. Exactly. And I would have bought it before, not after what I saw in your files. The rain intensified, the drops drumming on the leaves above our heads. Toby lifted his face to the sky, letting the water wash away the traces of a sleepless night. I put her things out on the porch, changed the locks, blocked access to our joint accounts. I looked at him in surprise. I hadn't expected such drastic action. Toby, I'm proud of you, but you should consult a lawyer before you— Already did, he interrupted me. I called Bramley at 3 a.m. He wasn't happy, but he listened. He's preparing the divorce papers today. Bramley, he's a longtime lawyer and friend of mine. Interesting choice given our complicated relationship with Toby. Why Bramley? You have your own lawyers. Toby looked me in the eye for the first time. Maksha Shurn, because he's ruthless. And that's exactly the kind of lawyer I need right now. We didn't talk for a while. I felt like Toby hadn't said everything. Thank you for opening my eyes, he said finally. But my question is, how long did you know? And why did you wait so long to tell me? It's a difficult question. The truth could shatter the fragile truce between us. A lie could make it worse. I began to suspect something wrong about 4 months ago, I said carefully, but I'd only recently gotten proof. I wanted to be sure before I accused your wife. And that's why you hired a private investigator? There was a flicker of irritation in his voice. Followed us? Her, I clarified. And only because I was worried about you. Holleran's a professional. He's— Holleran, Toby said the name with a chuckle. Your faithful dog who digs dirt on your orders. You know Miranda was right about something. You really are obsessed with control. I felt a familiar wave of anger rising inside. It's always like this. I try to help, and I get blamed. If it weren't for my control, you'd still be living with a woman who's cheating on you and planning to steal your money, I said sharper than I intended. Toby stood up, shoving his hands into the pockets of his sports jacket. I appreciate the information. I really am. But it doesn't change the fact that you invaded my life without permission. Again, like your father. Like a man who doesn't respect my boundaries, he interrupted. We both know this isn't just about Miranda. You've never approved of my decisions, not my career choices, not my lifestyle, not my friends. You always thought you knew better. The rain turned into a downpour. We stood under a tree, soaked and angry, like two roosters before a fight. I want to live my own life, Dad, Toby continued, without your supervision or interference, even if it means making mistakes. Like marrying Miranda? I couldn't help myself. His face darkened. Exactly. My mistakes, my consequences. But as of today, everything changes. I want full access to the trust fund. It's my mom's money and she wanted me to have it. This is it. The real reason for the meeting. You know the terms of the trust, Toby. Full access at age 40 or with my consent. I need that money now. I want a fresh start without looking back. A new life, new projects, or new Mirandas. I raised an eyebrow. Listen, son, I understand your desire to separate from me, from everything that was, but the trust fund is designed to protect you, including from yourself. I'm not asking you, his voice became firm. I'm asking for what is rightfully mine. We looked at each other through the veil of rain. At that moment, I made a decision I had been hatching for a long time. All right, I said. Come to my office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We'll meet with Bramley and discuss changing the terms of the trust. Toby's face brightened. Did it? You're okay with that? I didn't say I'd give you full access, I clarified. I said we'd discuss the changes. On my terms. His smile faded, but he nodded. Tomorrow at 10. We parted without a handshake. I watched Toby walk away down the rain-swept path, his back straight, his gait resolute. There was something of Cordelia about him, the same pride, the same stubbornness. When I got home, the first thing I did was call Bramley. Cyrus, we need to meet today. It's about Toby's trust fund. The lawyer sighed on the other end of the line. Hugh, are you aware that your son has already approached me about the divorce? Yes, and I approve. But the trust is a separate issue. I want to make some changes. What kind of changes? Substantial. Come and see me in person. Bramley arrived 3 hours later, a short, gaunt man with shrewd eyes and a reputation as a shark in the legal waters of Arlington Heights. He had worked with me for over 20 years and knew all my secrets, business and personal. What is it this time, Hugh? He asked, accepting a glass of scotch. Another war with your own son? Not a war, but a defense, I countered. Toby's impulsive. He'd just gotten over his wife's betrayal. Not a good time for big financial decisions. Bramley gave me a studied look. And that's why you want to change the terms of the trust Cordelia set up precisely to protect her son from your undue influence. Cordelia didn't foresee the Miranda situation. I turned away from the window. She believed in the best in people. I don't. What exactly are you suggesting? I pulled a folder of trust documents out of the safe. First, defer full payment for another 5 years. Second, a new condition. Any expenditure over $20,000 requires 2 signatures, Toby's and the trustees. Your signature, Bramley clarified. Not necessarily. It can be you or another independent trustee. The lawyer rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Hugh, do you realize that such a change is contrary to the spirit of Cordelia's will? She wanted her son to get that money. And he will. Just not all at once, and not all at once. It's for his own good. Bramley shook his head. Toby's going to be furious. He expects you to give him access to money tomorrow, not impose new restrictions. Let him learn to live with disappointment. I finished my scotch. Get the paperwork ready. One more thing. Yeah? I hear Toby's having trouble with the community center project. City Hall's asking for more expertise? Bramley's tense. Hugh, don't tell me you had something to do with this. I shrugged. Just make inquiries. Who's on the commission? What their grievances are? Maybe I can help. Or make things worse, the lawyer muttered. Hugh, I represent both of you. Don't make me pick a side. No one's asking you to choose. Just have the paperwork ready for tomorrow's meeting. After Bramley left, I sat in the office for a long time, looking at the family photo on the desk. Cordelia, me and little Toby in front of the unfinished Templeton Tower. We were all smiling, a happy family building a future. What would Cordelia say about my current actions? Would she approve of my methods? I don't think so. She was always softer, kinder. Hugh, you can't control the whole world, she'd say. Sometimes you just have to trust people. But it was her trustworthiness that made possible the creation of this trust, which has now become a bone of contention. She trusted that I would be fair to Toby, that I would find a balance between protection and freedom. I sighed and dialed Holleran's number. What about Miranda? She got a room at the Bloomfield Hotel, called Callahan several times, but he's not answering. Tried to contact her boss at the real estate agency, no luck either. Interesting, I smiled. Looks like my calls worked. After yesterday's incident, I had contacted several key figures in Miranda's life. The head of the real estate agency had gotten an anonymous tip about her shenanigans with clients. The editor of the society pages got a hint about a scandalous divorce involving a famous architect. And my friend at the IRS has a list of questionable transactions that need to be audited. What about Callahan? I asked. Why is he ignoring her calls? Perhaps because he got a warning from his friends at the police department? I could hear the chuckle in Holleran's voice. An anonymous source had reported possible links between his nightclubs and money laundering. Great, I nodded. Keep the surveillance going and find out who's leading the review of Toby's community center project. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. My office on the top floor of Templeton Tower was the perfect place for important negotiations. Spacious, overlooking the city, furnished with the antique furniture Cordelia loved so much. Bramley was already waiting for me with a folder of documents. Everything's ready, he said, but I still think you're making a mistake. Just do your job, Cyrus. Toby showed up at 10:00, wearing a business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He was clearly preparing for this meeting, perhaps envisioning how he would handle the millions he had received. Good morning. He nodded at me and shook Bramley's hand. Thank you for arranging the meeting so quickly. We sat down at the conference table. Bramley laid out the documents. I understand that this is about changing the terms of the trust fund set up by Cordelia Templeton. He began in a formal tone. Minus Mr. Tobias Templeton now had limited access to the funds for certain purposes, with full access coming on or before the age of 40 at the discretion of the trustee, Mr. Hugh Templeton. Toby tapped his fingers impatiently on the table. Yes, we know all that. Let's move on to the proposed changes. Bramley looked at me. I nodded. Minus Mr. Hugh Templeton proposes the following changes, the lawyer continued. First, to defer full payment of the principal until the beneficiary reaches the age of 45. What? Toby straightened up sharply. Is this a joke? Second, Bramley continued nonchalantly, impose a double endorsement for any expenditure over $20,000, the signature of the beneficiary and the trustee or designated fiduciary. Toby turned to me slowly, his face contorted with anger. You promised to discuss changes in my favor, and instead you're restricting me even more? I held his gaze calmly. Shaman, I promised to discuss changes. I didn't specify which ones. This is my offer. Toby jumped up, knocking over his chair. You're insufferable. Even now, when my life is falling apart, you continue your games of control. What's next? Are you going to try to sabotage my work? I remained silent, but something in my gaze must have given me away. Toby turned pale. Don't tell me. Problems with the community center project. Did you do this? Toby, calm down, Bramley interjected. Let's talk about this like adults. There's nothing to discuss. My son cut him off. I'm out of here, and you can keep the damn trust fund. I can manage without your money and without your help. He headed for the door, but I stopped him. Toby, wait. I'm acting in your best interest. After what happened with Miranda, You're in no position to make financial decisions. And you're in no position to judge my condition, he parried. You ruined my marriage, and now you're trying to ruin my career. That's very thoughtful, Dad. I saved you from a woman who was using you for money. So what? Now you expect me to be grateful? Fall at your feet screaming, "Thank you, Daddy." His voice oozed sarcasm. You didn't save me. You just eliminated a rival in the struggle for control of my life. Those words hit harder than I expected. Bramley coughed warningly, but I ignored him. Ungrateful boy, I muttered. I've worked my whole life to secure your future. Built the empire you rejected. Protected you from the mistakes you stubbornly continue to make. And this is your gratitude? Toby shook his head. You don't understand anything. You never will. He walked out, slamming the door. Bramley gathered up the papers, avoiding looking me in the eye. I warned you, he said quietly. File the papers with the court. I turned my back to the window. I'll change the terms of the trust without his consent. As trustee, I have that right. Toby can challenge that decision, and given the circumstances, he has a good chance. Let him try. In the meantime, check on that community center review. Who's heading up the commission? Bramley sighed. Frederick Lowell, your old, competitor. I smiled. Frederick Lowell owed me a favor after I helped his son avoid a DU I charged 3 years ago. It's about time I reminded him of that. Contact him. Tell him I want to discuss the evaluation, in person. Bramley shook his head. Hugh, you're out of line, using your influence to sabotage your own son's project. Not sabotage, but teach him a lesson, I corrected him. Sometimes you have to fall down to learn how to get up. When the lawyer left, I stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the city I had once built with such passion. Now many of the buildings belong to a new generation, young, ambitious, not recognizing authority, like Toby. Maybe he's right. Maybe I really can't let go of control. But isn't that a father's role to protect, to guide, even if the child resists? The phone vibrated. A message from Holleran. Miranda tried to get into Toby's office. Security wouldn't let her in. She's hysterical, threatening to go to the press. The revenge plan was unfolding exactly as I'd planned. Miranda was losing everything. Her husband, her career, her reputation. Toby was realizing the cost of his mistakes. And me. I did what I thought was right, even if it was questionable. Cordelia wouldn't have approved. But Cordelia's not here. It's just me, my son, and the city we're both trying to conquer in our own way. For the next 3 days, I hardly left the office, immersed in my work like a cocoon of salvation. The construction of a new shopping center on the west side of the city required my constant attention. Problems with contractors, delayed deliveries, endless approvals with city services. All these familiar concerns seemed almost a blessing compared to the family crisis. Holleran sent regular reports. Miranda changed her hotel to a cheaper one. Her credit cards were blocked. Apparently, Toby had taken care of that. She tried to contact Callahan, but he ignored her calls. The real estate agency suspended her pending an internal investigation. Toby, on the other hand, appeared to be fully immersed in his work. He spent 16 hours a day in the office trying to salvage a community center project that was stuck in bureaucratic purgatory thanks to my intervention. He hardly ever came home, spending the night at his friend Ashton's house. An artist I'd always considered a bad influence. I expected my son to try to contact me, perhaps to apologize or, more likely, to continue the confrontation. But the phone was silent. Toby seemed determined to cut me out of his life completely. On the 4th day after our meeting at the office, Bramley brought me the signed documents to change the terms of the trust fund. It's official, he said, placing the folder on my desk. But Toby had already hired his own lawyer to challenge your decision. Who? I felt a pang of concern. Eleanor Hartwick. I cursed. Eleanor Hartwick was a former prosecutor who'd gone into private practice, specialized in family trusts, and had a reputation as a ruthless opponent in court. Plus, there was a personal grudge between us. 10 years ago, I'd overbought a piece of land she'd claimed for a client of hers. Toby knows how to hit hard, I said. He's your son, Bramley shrugged. The apple of the tree. So what's next? It'll take a few weeks to prepare for the hearing, But I must warn you, Hartwick has already requested all the information about the private investigator you hired to follow Miranda. They may portray this as an invasion of privacy and an attempt at manipulation. I dismissed it. Let them try. I had good reason to be concerned. My son's wife had turned out to be a liar and a cheat. The court might see it differently, Bramley warned, especially if word gets out about your interference in the community center project. I glared at the lawyer. Nah, Sharnum, it won't come out unless someone leaks the information. You're not planning to betray me, are you, Cyrus? Bramley held my gaze. I represent your interests, Hugh, but I'm also an officer of the court, and if I'm asked under oath, you won't be asked, I leaned back in my chair, because it won't go to trial. Toby will cool off and realize I was acting in his best interest. The lawyer snorted skeptically but didn't say anything. When he left, I sat there for a long time, thinking about Bramley's words. Was Toby really ready to sue me? To take our family problems out in public? To risk the reputation I'd spent decades building? A cold rage rose up inside me. I dialed the number of Frederick Lowell, the head of the expert committee on Toby's project. Frederick, we need to meet. Today. An hour later, I was sitting in Lowell's office in the municipal building. A short, overweight man with thinning hair and perpetually wet palms, he had always made me mildly disgusted. But he was a powerful official and could be useful. Hugh, what a surprise. His smile didn't touch his eyes. To what do I owe the pleasure? The Harborside Community Center project. I got right to the point. Your commission is dragging its feet on the review. Lowell tensed. Standard procedure. We have questions about engineering and environmental safety. Redditaita. Come on, Frederick, I interrupted him. We both know the design is flawless. My son may be a stubborn idealist, but he's a damn good architect. Your son? Lowell feigned surprise. I didn't know Tobias Templeton was your... Oh, I see. That's why you're here. Family business. I ignored his hint. 3 years ago, when your son was in trouble, I helped. Didn't ask questions, didn't ask for anything in return. I thought I was being friendly. Lowell went noticeably pale. The incident with his son could have cost the guy his career and his freedom if it hadn't been for my intervention. I remember and appreciate your help, Hugh. Good. Then what I want you to do is delay the review for another 2 weeks, then reject the project. Find something, non-compliance with building codes, foundation problems, whatever. Lowell's staring at me. You want me to screw up your own son's project? Exactly. But why? It's weird, Hugh. Even for you. I stepped forward. Because Toby needs to be taught a lesson. He thinks he can live without my support, my connections. Let him learn how hard it is in this town to move projects forward without the right friends. Lowell licked his lips nervously. What do I get in return? I smiled. It's always the same with people like that. First moral outrage, then bargaining. A lot on Riverside Drive. The one you've had your eye on for your condominium. I'll sell it to your company at below market value. His eyes lit up. It was a prime piece of land, the last available piece of land overlooking the river in an upscale neighborhood. It's a deal. Lowell held out his hand. 2 weeks delay, then a negative report. But Hugh, your son will know you did this. Let him understand, I shook his moist palm, as long as he learns his lesson. When I got back to the office, I got 3 missed calls from an unknown number. I don't usually call back unknown numbers, but something, perhaps a sixth sense developed over years in the business, made me dial the number. After the 3rd ring, I heard a familiar voice. Hugh, is that you? Miranda. I almost pressed hang up, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I asked coldly. We need to talk. Her voice sounded desperate. Please, it's important. We have no common topics of conversation, Miranda. Your game is over. I know you're behind this. Her voice broke into a scream. Behind the firing, the frozen accounts, Callahan. You're the one who turned everyone against me. Don't flatter yourself, I said calmly, enjoying her panic. You ruined everything with your lies and your cheating. Hugh, listen. She suddenly changed her tone to a pleading one. Oh, I know we got off on the wrong foot. I've made mistakes. But I really do love Toby. He's a good man, and we can make things right if you stop interfering. I laughed. Love him? You used him for money, planned to run off with your lover with everything you could get your hands on. What a touching love. It was foolishness. A moment of weakness, she objected. Boyd means nothing to me. It was just business. Like your marriage, I suppose. Miranda was silent for a moment, then continued more quietly. Hugh, I know you think you're protecting your son, but you're ruining his life. He's miserable. He drinks every night. He's in trouble at work. Is this really what you wanted? This information was new. Halloran hadn't mentioned Toby's drinking. Maybe Miranda was bluffing to try to pressure me. But what if she wasn't? If he's unhappy, it's because of your betrayal, I answered, pushing the doubt away. Because of your interference, she exclaimed. You could have just shown him the evidence and let us deal with it. But no, you had to destroy me completely. Take away my job, my reputation, my future. Why? What did I ever do to you? You tried to use my son, my voice turned icy. No one does that with impunity. There was silence on the other end of the line. I thought Miranda had hung up when I heard her sobbing. I'm desperate, Hugh. You've ruined everything. My career, my marriage, my reputation. I have nothing left. What am I going to do? I felt a strange satisfaction. That's what I wanted to do, to break her, to make her feel helpless. But somehow there was no joy, only emptiness and a vague unease. This is your problem, Miranda. You made your choice when you decided to use my son. And you made yours when you chose to destroy me. Her voice was suddenly hard. But you know what? I'm not the only one who's going to get hurt. Toby is too. You're ruining his life with your revenge. Don't be dramatic, I cut her off. Toby can handle it. He's stronger than you think. He is? There was bitterness in her voice. Then why isn't he answering his co-workers' calls? Why was he seen drunk in a bar at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Why did he miss an important meeting with investors? I remained silent, not knowing whether to believe her. Hugh, I'm not calling to beg for forgiveness. I'm calling because I'm worried about Toby. Whatever you think of me, I really love him. In my own way. Your way of loving is very peculiar, I remarked dryly. So is yours, she countered. You call it defense, but really you just can't let go of control. Even if it destroys Toby. Her words hit something deep inside me. Too much like Cordelia's rebuke when we were arguing about raising her son. What do you want, Miranda? Why the call? I want you to stop, her voice trembled. Stop your vendetta. Not for me, for Toby. He's falling apart, and you keep pushing. I sighed, suddenly feeling tired. I'm doing what I think is right for my son. No, Hugh. You're doing what you think is right for you. For your ego. For your lust for control. Toby is a grown man. He's entitled to make mistakes and live his life. Even if those mistakes ruin his future? Yes, she answered firmly. Even then, it's his life, not yours. We were silent for a moment. It was a strange conversation, me, the great Hugh Templeton, getting moral lessons from the woman I had just destroyed. I shall think about what you say, I said at last. Will you? I could hear the surprise in her voice. Don't be fooled. I still think of you as a predator who tried to use my son. But, maybe you're right about something. I'll talk to Toby. Thank you, she paused. And Hugh, I know you won't believe me, but I really cared about Toby. Not everything was a lie. I didn't answer anything and hung up. Sitting in the silence of the office, I tried to sort through my feelings. Anger, the satisfaction of a successful revenge, but also the strange unease that Miranda's call had sown. The phone rang again. This time it was Halloran. Minus Mr. Templeton, I have information about your son. He's just left the Blue Lotus bar. He's heavily intoxicated. Heading towards his office, I think. Is he alone? Yes, sir. He looks, unstable. I'd recommend checking on him. I glanced at my watch. It's almost midnight. What was Toby doing in the office at this hour, and in an inebriated state? Follow him, but don't interfere, I ordered. I'm going there myself. Toby's office was in a modern building on the edge of the business center. When I pulled up, the lights were on in only a few windows, including my son's office on the 5th floor. The security guard in the lobby recognized me and let me in without asking questions. Taking the elevator, I walked down an empty hallway to a door with a sign that read, Tobias Templeton, lead architect. The door was ajar. Inside, only a desk lamp was lit, casting long shadows. Toby sat at the desk, bent over the blueprints. The whiskey bottle was almost empty. Toby? I entered cautiously. He raised his head. His eyes were red, his cheeks stubbled, his hair disheveled. His usual neatness was gone. Dad? He blinked as if he couldn't believe his eyes. What are you doing here? I was worried about you. I stepped closer. Holleran said, Oh yes, your loyal spy. Toby grinned bitterly. He's watching me now, isn't he? Now that Miranda's no longer of interest? I stayed silent, studying his face. I'd never seen my son so broken. Look, he pointed to the blueprints. My community center. It's a great project. But the commission suddenly finds 23 violations. 23! On a project I've personally inspected 10 times. Toby, don't pretend. He raised his hand. I know this is your doing. Your revenge for me not wanting to live by your rules. I sat down across from him, feeling a weight growing inside. I wanted to protect you, I said quietly. From what? From life? From your own decisions? He shook his head. You ruined my marriage, my career, my reputation, all because of your obsession with control. Words so similar to Miranda's accusations. Did they both see something I didn't? Miranda used you, I reminded him. She was with another man, planning to steal your money. I know, Toby exclaimed. You think that doesn't hurt me? But I had a right to deal with it myself, to decide whether to forgive or not, whether to divorce or try to save the marriage. He poured the rest of the whiskey into a glass and drank it down. Now look at me. My wife's gone. Job's in jeopardy. My reputation is tarnished. And you know what? She just called me. Miranda. Said she was worried about me. Can you believe that? The woman who betrayed me worries more than my own father. I could feel the color flooding over my face. She called me too, I admitted. She said the same thing. Toby looked at me in surprise. What did you say? That I would think about what she said. I sighed. Toby, maybe I was too insistent in my desire to protect you. But believe me, I only wanted what was best for you. Best for who? He grinned bitterly. For me? Or for your ego? We sat in silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Father and son, separated by a table, a bottle of whiskey, and years of misunderstanding. I can fix this, I said at last. A commission, a project, a trust fund. But not my marriage, Toby finished. Not my trust in you. I couldn't come up with an answer. He was right. Some things couldn't be fixed with a snap of the fingers, even if you had money and power. At that moment, Toby's cell phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. Miranda, he said, pointing it at me. Third time in an hour, she's in a panic. Answer it, I suggested. Toby hesitated, then pressed a button and put me on speakerphone. Yes? Toby! Miranda's voice sounded hysterical. Thank God you answered. I'm scared. They were here, threatening. They said that if you didn't pay them back. Who? Toby asked sharply, instantly sobering up. Who was here? Kovach's men. They know where I'm staying. They said they're giving you until tomorrow or else. The line went dead. Toby dialed the number again in a panic, but Miranda's phone was unavailable. Shit, he jumped up. I have to find her. Toby, stop, I held his hand. It could be dangerous. Who's Kovach? My son looked at me with desperation. A man I owe money to. A lot of money. How much? 300,000. Gambling. He lowered his eyes. Another secret you'll uncover and use against me. I shook my head. Not this time. This time I'll just help. No conditions, no moralizing. Just like father to son. Toby looked at me incredulously. Why now? Because you're right, I stood up. I was obsessed with control. Thought I knew what was best for you, but I guess I only messed it up. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. We'll find Miranda, and then we'll deal with the rest. We walked out of the office together. It was raining outside, washing away the grime of the city and maybe some of our mutual resentment. I didn't know if we could rebuild what had been destroyed by my revenge. But in that moment, I realized I was willing to try. For Toby, and maybe a little for myself. It had been 3 weeks since the night Toby and I had left his office to find Miranda. 3 weeks that changed everything. Events had moved swiftly, like a torrent sweeping away everything in its path. Illusions, plans, hopes. We found Miranda in a cheap motel on the outskirts of town. No one had threatened her. It was a ruse, a last desperate attempt to get Toby to respond. I could see the disappointment in my son's eyes as he realized he'd been tricked again. But there was something else. Relief that she was okay. That night, the three of us talked until dawn. Honestly, with no overtures. Toby talked about his gambling addiction that started in college. About the debts that were mounting. Fear of losing the respect of his father and co-workers if the truth came out. Miranda admitted that she initially saw my son as just access to the Templeton family's wealth. But over time, she really grew attached to him. The Callahan connection was insurance for her. She didn't believe her relationship with Toby would last. I never knew how to be happy, she said then, and for the first time I saw her not as a calculating predator, but simply a broken woman. I talked too, about the fear of losing my son, my only family left, about how control had become my way of expressing care, about how Cordelia's death had left a void I'd tried to fill by interfering in Toby's life. By morning, we came to an agreement. I would help with Kovac's debts, not as a favor, but as a father, without conditions or oversight. I'll fix a situation with the community center project. I'll give Toby back full access to the trust fund, like Cordelia wanted. In return, Toby promised to seek professional help for his gambling addiction. And Miranda. Miranda had agreed to leave without scandal or court battles. I've done enough damage already, she said, looking at Toby with genuine pain. I've kept my end of the bargain. The debt to Kovac was paid off the next day. Another 3 days later, the Lowell Commission unexpectedly approved the community center project, calling it innovative and promising. Bramley prepared documents giving Toby back full control of the trust fund. I thought we were starting a new chapter, righting wrongs, rebuilding trust. I was so wrong. A week after our late-night conversation, Toby invited me to lunch. We met at the restaurant where he and Cordelia had once dined often, an old-fashioned place with dark wood paneling and white tablecloths. I came with hope. I left with the realization of irreparable loss. I'm leaving Arlington Heights, Toby said as the main course was served. Accepted an offer from an architectural firm in Seattle. I start in a month. I froze with fork in hand. Seattle? But, your project is here, the community center. You've put so much into it. I'm turning it over to Leighton, Toby's deputy. He can handle it. I left detailed instructions. Is this about Miranda? I asked, trying to understand. Or is it about me? Toby set the cutlery aside and looked me in the eye. Because of everything, Dad. I need a fresh start. A new town, new people, new projects. There's too much history. You can start over here, in the city you know and love. He shook his head. I can't. Every corner of Arlington Heights reminds me of what was, of Miranda, of our problems, about how you interfered. I was trying to protect you, I countered, feeling a familiar wave of irritation rising. You were trying to control, Toby replied calmly. There's a difference, and it's not just that. I need space to figure myself out, to figure out what I really want out of life. And to do that, you have to go to the other side of the country? Yes, he nodded. That's exactly what it's for. We finished our lunch in tense silence. When the bill came, Toby insisted on paying. I'm not your little boy anymore, Daddy, he said with a sad smile. In the parking lot, before getting into his car, he hugged me. Tight, just like when I was a kid coming back from long business trips. For a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'll call Ishuri, he said, pulling away, and come for the holidays. But I need that distance. Do you understand? I nodded, not trusting my voice. We both knew the calls would be infrequent and the visits would be short and formal. Toby was leaving my life. Not completely, but enough to leave a void that couldn't be filled. 2 weeks later, I watched the movers move things out of his house. Boxes, furniture, paintings, everything that made up my son's life in Arlington Heights. Holleran reported that Toby had sold the house to a young family from Chicago for less than market value, but enough to start a new life in Seattle without financial problems. I didn't go to the airport to see him off. He didn't invite me, and I didn't impose. Our goodbye was 3 days before our flight. Another dinner, another low-key hug, another promise to stay in touch that we both didn't believe in. As for Miranda, her story didn't end well. The real estate agency officially fired her after an internal investigation found irregularities in the transactions. Boyd Callahan, her former lover, found himself under investigation for money laundering through his nightclubs. All her connections, all the doors that used to open before her, slammed shut. I could have gloated. I could savor her downfall, seeing it as just retribution for trying to take advantage of my son. But the strange thing was, there was no satisfaction, only emptiness and a vague sense that there were no real winners in this story. The day before Toby left, I got a strange phone call. "Minus Mr. Templeton?" The woman's voice was barely recognizable. "It's Miranda." "What do you want?" I asked, surprised by her call. "To say goodbye," she said quietly. "I'm leaving town too. I got a job at a real estate agency in Portland. It's a modest position, not what I'm used to, but fresh start." "Why are you calling me?" "Because I want you to know I don't hold a grudge against you." Her voice sounded sincere. "You did what you thought was right for your son, just like I did what I thought was right for me. We both lost." "Toby's the one who really suffered," I argued. "Yes," she agreed. "But maybe it's for the best. He's finally free. From me, from you, from this town with its expectations and history. Sometimes you have to lose everything to start over." After her call, I stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the city I'd helped build. For so many years, I believed I was creating a legacy for my son. But Toby never wanted that legacy. He wanted to create his own. The day Toby left, I couldn't find a place to be. Rushing around the empty house, checking my phone every 5 minutes, even though I knew he wouldn't call. At some point, I got in my car and drove off without a destination. I didn't realize how I ended up at the airport. Toby's flight was scheduled to leave at 16:30. I arrived at 15:45, realizing the absurdity of my action. What was I going to do? Beg him to stay? Make a scene in the departure lounge? I stayed in the car in the parking lot, watching the terminal through the windshield. And I saw him, a tall figure with a suitcase, heading toward the entrance. Toby walked confidently, not looking back. His gait had the determination of a man who knows where he's going and why. At that moment, I realized I had lost him for good. Not today, much earlier. Maybe the day I'd started following his wife instead of talking to him honestly, or even earlier, when I couldn't accept his choice to become an architect instead of a builder. Or even earlier, when after Cordelia's death, I'd shut myself away in my grief, not realizing that my son was suffering too. I didn't get out of the car. I didn't call out to him. Just watched him disappear behind the terminal doors, taking a piece of my life with him. Back home, I let Holleran go. "Your services are no longer required," I told him over the phone. The detective wasn't surprised. He always understood when a case was closed. Bramley sent the final trust fund papers. All the money, every cent, now belonged to Toby with no conditions or restrictions. I signed the papers and sent them back without reading the attorney's cover letter. No matter what he wrote, consolations, advice, warnings, nothing could change the fact that my revenge had turned against myself. Revenge. What a big word for such a petty feeling. I thought I was protecting my son from a predator, but really I just couldn't bear to lose control of his life. Miranda was just a convenient excuse to intervene, to reassert my power. The result? Toby on the other side of the country, starting a new life without me. Miranda, broken but not destroyed, has also left to find a fresh start. And me. I was left alone in the big house I had once built for my family, with the realization that my victory had turned out to be a defeat. In the evening, sitting in my study with a glass of whiskey, I looked at the family photos. Cordelia, me, little Toby, in front of the unfinished Templeton Tower. We were all smiling, full of hope and plans for the future. "Hugh, your problem is that you never stop in time," Cordelia was saying. How right she was. I always followed through, even when I should have backed off. In business, that trait has brought me success. In my personal life, only loss. The phone rang. For a moment, my heart jumped. Toby? But Frederick Lowell's name popped up on the screen. The chairman of the committee who, at my request, had nearly killed my son's project. Hugh, we need to talk, he began without preamble. About that lot on Riverside Drive. You promised to sell it to my company at a reduced price. I chuckled. Everything was going back to the way it was. Deals, arrangements, promises. Business goes on, even when personal lives fall apart. Forget it, Frederick, I replied. I've changed my mind. The plot is not for sale. But we had a deal. Lowell was indignant. I kept my end of the bargain, approved your son's project. After you almost screwed it up at my request, I reminded him. Consider us even. I'm keeping the lot. You're going to regret this, Hugh, he said, fury well hidden in his voice. I have connections. I can make trouble for your company. Try, I smiled, though he couldn't see it. I'll have something to do in the coming months. I hung up, feeling strangely relieved. Frederick Lowell would try to get revenge, of course. A new business war would begin, new intrigues and maneuvers. But that's what I do best. It's what I've always won at. Unlike family relationships, where I've been soundly defeated. I woke up the next morning with a firm decision. If I can't bring my son back, I will at least preserve what he has created here. The Harborside Community Center must be built exactly as Toby designed it, with no changes or compromises. It will be my way of asking for forgiveness, my memorial to our broken relationship. I called Leighton, Toby's deputy, now the project's chief architect. Minus Mr. Templeton? I could hear the surprise in his voice. What can I do for you? I'd like to discuss the community center, I said. My company is willing to invest additional funds, but on one condition. The project remains exactly as Toby envisioned it. No changes. Shira, I understand, Leighton said quietly. Actually, Toby had anticipated this call. He left a message for you. What kind of message? He said, if my father offers to help with the project, tell him I'm grateful, but I'll manage on my own, even from a distance. I felt my throat constrict. Toby had anticipated my move, knew I'd try to interfere, to control, to help, and had blocked that path beforehand. I get it, I said after a pause. Tell him. No, don't tell him anything. He knows what I wanted to say. I hung up the phone and went to the window. The day was clear, sunny. The city I'd helped build spread out before me. Shining buildings, wide streets, parks, and plazas. My legacy, my mark on the earth. But the only thing that really mattered, Toby, was now living his life thousands of miles away, without me, because of me. I executed my revenge perfectly. Miranda lost everything, her job, her reputation, her husband. I proved I was right about her, but the price of that victory was exorbitant. I'd lost my son as completely as I'd once lost Cordelia. Only this time I had only myself to blame. Maybe in years to come, Toby would be able to forgive me. Maybe in time our relationship would become at least formally normal. Occasional holiday calls, short visits every few years. But that close, real companionship I dreamed of, father and son working together, trusting each other, carrying on the family business, that would never happen. My revenge had destroyed that possibility forever. I took my glass and silently toasted to my Pyrrhic victory, to being right about Miranda and catastrophically wrong about everything else. Sometimes winning a battle means losing the war. I won the battle with Miranda, but I lost my son in it. And no amount of money, power, or connections could undo that. Revenge, as it turns out, is not only cold, it's bitter, especially when you have to eat it alone.